Good evening from Los Angeles. I'm Chris Hayes. The President of the United States is exposed and imperiled in a way he's never quite been before. And he is dealing with that reality in a very concrete way right in front of us. While the impeachment inquiry into President Trump is focused on his actions towards Ukraine, the implications of the investigation are beginning to weigh on the entirety of his presidency. And Trump's support from within his own party is beginning to crack. On Thursday, Trump sent his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, out to announce he was committing his most brazenly corrupt offense to date by hosting the next G7 at his own Doral resort in Miami, awarding himself an enormous government contract. Just 2 days later, Trump announced Doral was out, blaming Democrats and the media. But the Washington Post reports Trump was forced to abandon his plan, quote, after it became clear the move had alienated Republicans and swiftly become part of the impeachment inquiry that threatens his presidency. So yesterday, Mick Mulvaney was dispatched to Trump TV to clean things up, but did not exactly make it better.
At the end of the day, he still considers himself to be in the hospitality business, and he saw an opportunity to take the biggest leaders from around the world, and he wanted to put on the absolute best show, the best visit that he possibly could, and he was very comfortable doing that at Doral. And I think we were all surprised at the level of pushback. I think it's the right decision to change. We'll have to find someplace else, and my guess is we'll find someplace else that the media won't like either for another reason.
I just have to pick up. You say he considers himself in the hospitality business. He's the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Yes. And in the hospitality business, why not merge the two? See, it's fine if the president violates basic principles of self-dealing because he still considers himself to be in the hospitality business. And one thing that's clear is that Trump's retreat on Doral is part of a larger decline in his relative political strength. The reversal is born of the specific political weakness Trump currently has, which is tied to the impeachment inquiry. The New York Times reports Saturday Trump called Mick Mulvaney, who was hosting a group of so-called moderate Republicans, the people Trump can't afford to lose in an impeachment vote, and was, quote, told the consensus was he should reverse himself on Doral. The fact is, what Trump did was so flagrant and so indefensible, almost no one other than Mick Mulvaney and maybe Marco Rubio wanted to defend it. Trump knows there's going to be an impeachment vote against him. And at the same time, he's got Republican senators, the people who've stood by Trump through his Charlottesville comments, his support for Vladimir Putin, his policy of kidnapping children from parents. Those people now making noises of support for the impeachment inquiry, second-guessing his ability to steer the ship of state and decrying the Syria decision.
We certainly can't have presidents asking foreign countries to provide something of political value that is, after all, against the law.
Are you open-minded if more comes out that you could support impeachment?
Sure. I mean, show me something that is a crime. If you could show me that, Trump actually was engaging in a quid pro quo outside the phone call, that would be very disturbing.
That's an interesting sentence from Lindsey Graham there. Fox News host Chris Wallace said yesterday that a well-connected Republican told him if the House votes to impeach Trump, there's a 20% chance enough Republicans in the Senate will vote with Democrats to remove Trump from office. Now, who knows what to make of that probability number, but it is a long way from the total support from Trump that we've seen to this point. The Washington Post, Philip Ruckert says Trump finds himself mired in a season of weakness and points out officials inside Trump's administration are, quote, openly defying his wishes by participating in the impeachment probe. Tomorrow, Congress will hear from Bill Taylor, and that's Trump's and the U.S.'s head diplomat in Ukraine, who made a paper trail of Trump's corrupt Ukraine policy with that now famous text message, quote, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. And the witnesses are going to keep coming, and with them an ever-growing snowball of bad news to the president. The simple truth of where we are right now, it's staring us all in the face. Trump is in a very, very tough spot right now. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.